Hello everyone, welcome back to Keeping Up with the Chaldeans. I'm Anthony Toma, your host, and today we have Debbie Lossia and Ted Forman of Forman Law Office. We're going to educate everybody on the ERC program, how to get your money that you rightfully deserve, and keep it, which is very important too. This is Debbie Lossia.
Hi, everyone.
You want to kind of introduce yourself, what the Chaldean connection is. I'm sure people are looking at the camera and saying, well, these people aren't Chaldean, but
Oh, yes.
yeah. So go ahead. Why don't you introduce yourself? And
So I'm Debbie Lossia. My dad is Jimmy Lossia. I grew up in Detroit in the Chaldean community. I now live in Florida, where I practice law. And Ted is a business partner that I've been working with that is also from Detroit. He is Lebanese, and, just talking to him, we thought, let's, do this show and get into the Chaldean community and start to get some of our Chaldean communities their ERC funding.
yeah, not to get into the Chaldean community, but to get back into
To
the
get
Chaldean
back
community.
into it,
Because you
since
guys
I'm
are
in
both
Florida,
from Detroit.
yes.
You cannot avoid Chaldeans in the city of Detroit.
Well,
No.
and to go one step further, down in Florida, if you're Lebanese, if you're Chaldean, everyone calls you
Lump-
Arab,
lump
and so
one,
we're
yeah.
all one big happy family
Yeah.
down south in
Exactly.
Florida. So.
Exactly. So why don't you kind of educate the audience on what the ERC is and why they should be contacting you to get their share.
Absolutely. So the ERC is actually short for the Employee Retention Tax Credit, which is a program that goes all the way back to the beginning of COVID. When the whole world shut down in March of 2020, Congress rushed to put some programs in place. They enacted this law called the CARES Act, which the CARES Act also includes PPP, which everyone knows about.
Right.
And back when the law was first put in place in March of 2020, ERC and PPP were both considered, but originally the law was that you could only choose one or the other. And because PPP was faster and easier, everyone went straight for PPP.
Yeah.
And most people didn't even pay attention, didn't even know about the ERC program.
And still don't.
Many still don't.
Yeah.
Now, with that in mind, though, 1 year later, fast forward to early 2021, as President Trump was leaving office, he quietly changes the law. And so instead of it being one or the other, the new law says that even if you applied for PPP, you can still eligible to put in for your ERC, or the Employee Retention Tax Credit, which it's really not a proper, it's a misnomer because it's a rebate. This is a program that rewards business owners for keeping their W-2 employees on the books during the COVID months.
Yeah.
So, so the law still stayed relatively quiet, and because everyone assumed that when President Biden came in, they were going to undo everything that Trump did on his way out of office.
Yeah.
But on the contrary,
Right.
President Biden looks at this and says, this is a good program. We need to stimulate the economy and reward these business owners. So not only does Biden allow the law to stand, but for the 2021 year, it's more lucrative and easier to apply for.
Right.
So I guess the takeaway on the program is this is the one thing in Washington that both Republicans and Democrats can agree upon.
It's a miracle.
Well, and it really is. And so it's really been a godsend for a lot of businesses who, need that cash infusion.
Yeah. So just to unpack that a little bit. So PPP, you applied for the PPP because it was like in your face and easy and a little more straightforward. So you applied for PPP. Whether you got approved or denied, you still have the right to apply to the ERC. Is that correct?
100% correct.
They're independent of each other.
They're independent. However, in the calculation for the amount, you're not allowed to double dip. So what I tell people, of course, every case is different, but the general thinking is if a company took PPP money and they apply for the ERC, they're looking at about $15,000 on average per W-2 employee. If they did not
What does that mean, looking at on average? What are you saying there?
So if you have a person, a 10-person business who has 10 W-2 employees, and I should say unrelated, not the business owner and not immediate family members. So unrelated W-2 employees, if they have 10 of those and they took PPP, the average is about $150,000 per business. So it's real money. Now, one step further, if the company was denied PPP or never took PPP, you're looking at closer to $25,000 per employee.
Gotcha.
So the numbers are really quite staggering, you know.
So one thing I wanted to add, you know, about Ted, one of the reasons why, you know, I really got excited about getting involved was because of his background. He used to work for the tax division of the U.S. government, prosecuting IRS cases. So he really knows the ins and outs on both sides. And I have personally sent him people that have said, you know, my accountant told me I couldn't get it, or I was told, whatever reason they were told they couldn't get it. And I said, listen, just call Ted, you know, let him do his thing. And he did. And he was successful. And, you know, he kind of proved his, you know, model to me. And I was like, you know what, this is something I want to help and do and help a lot of the business owners get the money that they're entitled to.
Yeah, so some have already gotten it. And so when we had a conversation earlier, I was surprised that it was still an open program, and you explained that
you open a lot of issues, and so let me follow up on a few of those things, and just a little bit about my background.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I started my career here in Detroit back 100 years ago when all the accounting firms were in the Renaissance Center.
Wow.
And I worked for Touche Ross, the Big 8 accounting firm. Then I moved over to Price Waterhouse. Decided to go to law school, so I went to law school at night while I worked in the accounting firm.
Where at?
At University of Detroit, same as
our
me.
alma mater.
Yes.
And so my first job out of law school was actually in Washington, D.C., litigating IRS cases on behalf of the tax division of the Justice Department. So, you know,
So you were one of the bad guys.
well, depends on good or bad, but
Joking.
I think the most important thing, though, is I've seen how the government works, and I have an understanding of, you know, the IRS and their procedures. And obviously with this program, we spent a lot of time analyzing it. And, you know, so in the very beginning, when we first started doing this, you know, the conversation was very different with business owners, because people couldn't believe it. It sounded too good to be true. They thought it was a scam. And so it was a lot of convincing that, you know, yes, this is accurate. Now the conversation is, well, my accountant said I don't qualify. Or, you know, why should I do it with you, because I don't need to pay a lawyer to do this. And, you know, with all due respect, the accountants, and I can say it because I was one of them, you know, many times they're too busy to focus on the law. And there's really two ways businesses can qualify. There's the revenue reduction test, where businesses who lost money during COVID compared to pre-COVID, the revenues were down. And you know, that tends to be the accountant mentality. They like to compute and look at the numbers, but there is a different way. And it's more of a legal analysis. And without getting in too deep into the legal argument, the discussion is, you know, if a business was temporarily or partially impacted during COVID, and then the word is temporary partial business interruption. And, you know,
Very broad.
It's very broad, and it's a very gray area. And so that's what lawyers do. You know, we argue gray areas, and so the law itself is ambiguous. There's no clear definitions. And because the law has only been around for a couple years, there's no case law. There's no court cases that say whether business X definitely qualifies or business Y. Now, that being said, you know, I think, and as any business should, that when you apply for this rebate, that you want to do so with a reputable business.
Right.
And there's a lot of discussion going on right now with the IRS and Congress about, many of us have now heard or seen firsthand, these businesses are cold calling companies. There's these unscrupulous companies who are going to be on to the next hustle after this is over with. And the IRS is starting to target those companies, and the people who are going to suffer are the business owners who are going to be left holding the bag.
Yeah.
My perspective, you have a law firm standing behind it,
Right.
willing to argue for you. And we've got a little bit of a unique business model with what we do. And that is, in our firm, we don't charge anything up front. We only get paid after the business owner gets their money from the IRS.
Right.
Now, as part of that program, though, it doesn't end there. Because if the business owner has any issues whatsoever, if the IRS says, we don't think you are entitled to it, or they want to audit the business, part of our fee includes representing the company all the way through the process. And we have a vested interest in winning the case for the business owners, because we have a fee refund policy that says if you have to give back $1 to the IRS, we are going to refund our fee proportionately to the business owner.
Yeah.
So
That's what when Debbie brought this kind of project to me, I was like intrigued because of the kind of dual background that you had in the accounting and in the legal side. And then I'd never heard that there was an issue with the IRS or recouping. And for me to put somebody on the show, I want to make sure that people that are taking advantage of these opportunities that you're bringing them, that it's backed and legit and kind of stable.
And Anthony, let me be clear with you. Anyone who guarantees a company that they're going to get their money and 100%, no one's got a crystal ball.
Right.
There is talk now that the IRS is considering petitioning Congress to shorten the time frame. That's
What does
the
that
newest
mean?
thing. So the deadline for filing for the ERC, and I should go back, there's 2 years involved. It's 3 quarters of 2020. So the second, third, fourth quarter of 2020.
If you were in business at that time.
If you were in business and had employees.
And had employees,
And the first, second, and third quarters of 2021. And so the filing deadline is April 15th of next year for 2020.
Gotcha.
But then for the 2021 tax year, which is more lucrative,
Maybe another
it's
year.
Another year after that, which would be April 15th of 2021.
No, 2020.
Excuse me, 2025.
Yeah.
So, right. So the other thing that's important to know is that this is a payroll tax program. And so this is not involving the income taxes. It's people who are fearful, I don't want the IRS looking at my business mileage or my charitable contributions. This is strictly related to the company's payroll. So it's a filing of an amended Form 941. It's got nothing to do with the business tax returns.
Right.
So
important
to know.
It's information coming from your CPA or your payroll company to you, and then you're off and you do your thing, and then you decide how much they're going to get or what they qualify for, and then you push the application through.
Well, and not only push the application through, and it's important to know that we work with, we do everything.
Yeah.
So if many businesses have payroll companies, we work directly with the payroll company, get the information that we need. We prepare all the documents. We sign the documents, which is very important because I think, again, if the IRS sees that a law firm is putting their name on this, that it gives a level of credibility.
For sure.
And so to be clear, it requires an analysis by our firm to be able to put our name on that.
Yeah.
But, the important thing to know is that no one has a crystal ball. No one can guarantee it. But I think if you want to position yourself to get approved, get the money, and keep the money, it only makes sense that you would want to have professionals standing behind that.
Absolutely. So you're speaking to anyone that was in business at that time that had even a single person on payroll that wasn't the manager, not the manager, but the owner or the...
And that's a good point, because, there are some companies that are out there that have created this misconception that you have to have at least 5 employees. And that's not true.
Right.
And it's more lucrative, obviously, for the business, the more employees. But, I've represented friends of mine who had 1 employee.
Right.
And, I don't know about you, but I could use $15,000, $20,000.
And that's what they're looking at, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Their share of that money that they paid taxes into the system that is out, that the money's out there for them to be had.
Right. And it's not a giveaway. It's not like some people are taking something that doesn't belong to them. This is a law that says you paid the payroll.
Yeah.
The payroll taxes are already in. It's a refund of payroll taxes that have already been paid.
Right.
And, it's really a pleasure to be on here because being from Detroit, Debbie and I often talk, between the Arabs and Chaldeans and all business owners. So this is really the market for people. And, I know the word has gotten out, but this sea is so large. Many fish are already caught, but there are so many businesses who either are still skeptical or don't believe it or didn't realize it.
Or their accountant told them that they couldn't get it, or, they just thought they couldn't get it.
Right.
And it's frustrating because a lot of times, I hear that when my accountant says I don't qualify, my first response is to say, well, let's set up a call with the accountant. And more often than not, after explaining the law, then some of my best referral sources have been those accountants who were initially skeptical.
Yeah. So there's some work on the accountant's end to go back and re-amend some of the returns, right?
Yes, it is. And so to be clear, the money that comes back to the business owner is a taxable event. But like my accountant tells me when I complain, give me the money, I'll pay the taxes on it. That's part of the deal. And our formal position is we always defer to the tax preparer for the business as to how to handle it, because they're the ones doing that. But it's pretty clear that the IRS takes a strong position that they don't want you to just treat it as income when you receive it and do it like that. That's the common sense way, but many things with the government are not common sense based.
Right.
What they want is they want the business owner to go back and file amended tax returns in the 2020 and 2021 years to reflect the reduction of payroll taxes.
Correct.
And so it is a little bit more work, and I can't confirm this, but what we have heard is that if the business does not file the way the IRS wants this amended return, that is a red flag, and that exposes the business owner to maybe get reviewed or something, which nobody wants.
Yeah. So.
Which is why you want someone
a professional, right? Applying for this is not going to take away from the current business owner's day-to-day, right? Because if they work with you, like you said, you're going to do all the legwork. So they shouldn't be fearful of having to go back and amend because that's their CPA's duty to do.
Well, what I tell people is it does require a little bit of engagement because usually it's a 10-minute conversation kind of discussing the issues that we're talking about. And then, we have to have an in-depth conversation about how the business was affected, whether the revenues were down or how they were negatively impacted.
Right.
And then, conversations with the accountant to get the payroll information or the payroll company. But, a couple hours maybe.
The law firm does.
Yeah, but we do all the work with them. But, if the business owner has to spend an hour with us and they get back a couple $100,000
Of their money that they're due.
Yes.
of money that
Yep.
is
They're
entitled
due.
to them.
So just so people can kind of relate to this, give us some examples of how a business would have been negatively impacted besides just the profit.
So, and again, this is that gray area that that is open to interpretation. But the actual language,
Which is opportunity, right?
sure,
Okay.
and that's listen, that's. Let me start with this.
Okay.
If the business is a fraud, and the company is giving fake payroll information, those are the people that are going to get prosecuted. Those are the people who are going to jail. And we've all heard
Don't
about
call
what's
us.
happening in
Yeah,
PPP.
Wait,
you're
don't
not
tell us, right.
submitting that.
Right. No,
Yeah,
no, no.
yeah.
But those are the people that are going to get in big trouble criminally.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the issues with the company and the arguments to be made, it's like any other lawsuit. You make your argument, maybe the IRS disagrees, that's why we have disputes and we negotiate or whatever. But the language within the statute itself talks about governmental ordered shutdowns. Now, it's vague.
Blanket.
It's as clear as mud.
Yeah.
And I guess some of the issues that have come up is, if the government has ordered your business to close, we consider that to be an A-plus business.
Yeah.
Restaurants and it's important to note that the whole business doesn't have to be shut down. So even if a part of the business was negatively impacted,
Right.
the government takes the position that the entire business qualifies.
Yeah.
The example that we give is, sometimes like a small cafe within another, some of these retail stores, they'll have a cafe
Yeah.
within the property, and the cafe was shut down, but the retail still went going on. The whole business would qualify, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
so
of
you don't
course.
have to try to pare it out and say, well, it was only 1/10 of the
Right,
business
right,
or
right.
whatever. So, and it's important to note too, sometimes we have this conversation with the accountants and they'll say, well, the IRS has sent out these recommendations or regulations. That's not the law.
Right.
And I understand the IRS can say what they want, and of course we follow we consider their recommendations, but at the end of the day, it's a tax court, U.S. District Court. It's a court that would make these final conclusions as to how to interpret this law.
Right.
And what we typically do is we look at these businesses and we're very transparent with them and say, look, on the one extreme, sorry, it looks like you don't qualify and,
Yep.
and we have to go our separate way. And then there's on the other side, we think you have a really good claim that we would fight all the way through. And then many businesses fall in between. And we say you have a good case or an okay case. And then it's just, at the end of the day, it's the business owner who has to take their level of what their appetite for risk is.
Right.
And I also want to point out, I think, a lot of times when we all think business owners, we're thinking of typical, retail kind of businesses, but it's also doctor's offices, dentist offices, a lot of those type of businesses as well that didn't think that they would qualify,
Right.
that we're finding that, I didn't even know what ERC was. You know?
And just on top of that, those are some of the best eligible businesses,
Right.
because they were really impacted. What I would say is every business throughout the entire country, anyone who files a Form 941, anyone who files payroll tax returns can consider the ERC. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean they qualify. It doesn't mean they're going to get their money. It doesn't mean they're, automatically. But that's and there are some other limitations, like it's a small business program, so
Yeah.
under 500 employees.
Okay.
So, but we've taken very small companies and as favors, like I said, 1-2 employees that other companies won't take. We help our clients.
Gotcha. You made me forget what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Like I said, I like to talk.
Yeah, yeah. No, you did good. Okay, so I know this episode is supposed to be focused on ERC, right? But what other services do you guys provide that someone listening might be able to take advantage of?
I think to answer that, I think I would turn over to Debbie
Okay.
and let her
Wow.
make her pitch because,
Sure.
you know, I've already got my
Yeah.
whole thing
Well,
going in
but
Florida.
you also is very involved in doing mass tort cases, which is something I've gotten involved in, like all these Camp Lejeune cases. And I also do estate planning, wills, trusts, which is, you know, specific to Florida because that's where
Yeah.
I work. So anybody who has any Florida clients or anybody moving down to Florida, you need new documents, your power of attorney, your healthcare, none of that. Michigan POAs do not work in Florida, vice versa. So that's also, you know, part of what I do.
So would it work for someone that is transplanted their parents to Florida
Yes.
part-time or full-time? Or
So
how
it
would,
depends where their residence is.
Can
Right.
I step in here for a moment?
Yeah.
Sure.
I think the way to present this is to say, because there's such a strong, I mean, New York and Florida is like this,
Yes.
but there are so many people in South Florida from Michigan.
Oh, yeah. It's
that
insane.
I would, the way I would present it is to say, Debbie is your Florida connection. If you need a lawyer, and then even if you
cut
can't
right.
help them, then you can refer it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
the way I would pitch that and say, hey, if you've got, you know, anyone going to Florida, get in touch with Debbie because you're going to have legal needs. You're going to need to update your will. You know, God forbid you
trust,
got a
you
cousin
buy
who's on
property.
vacation and got in a car accident.
Yeah.
You know, all that, and call Debbie and send it that way.
For sure.
That's I think if you can do a little segment on that, that's the way to handle that.
Well, that's great. So if anyone wants to take advantage of this, Debbie's going to explain how.
I can be reached at 561-251-3134, which is my personal cell phone number, or you can reach Ted.
You can call my office at 1-800-827-7731 or visit our website at erclawyers.com.
I think I'm good.
All right, cool. All right, so did we cover it? So we covered everything.
Yeah.
I'm shamelessly
Yes.
promoting you.
I know, it's great. Yeah,
So
That's
we
excellent.
close out every show by asking, what does it mean to you to be Chaldean?
Oh gosh, I'm very proud to be Chaldean, and I get super excited living in Florida when someone hears my last name and says, "Oh, is that Italian?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "No, it's something you've never heard of." And I go through the whole explanation, and I oftentimes use Nebuchadnezzar, who built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Everybody's familiar with that. Everybody's kids, you know, learns about that when they study ancient civilization in 6th grade, at least in Florida. So my kids get super excited when their teachers start talking about Chaldeans, and I'll just, one little story, and my son raised his hand in 6th grade and said, "I'm Chaldean." And his teacher was like,
Wow.
"No, you're not." You know, and he was like, "No, I'm Chaldean."
Wow.
And, you know, she called me up
That's an
after
amazing story.
and, you know, had me tell the story, you know, of the Chaldeans, and she was just couldn't believe she was meeting a real Chaldean.
so
I've had
cool.
a few situations like that,
That's
you know,
so
where
cool.
people who really know the Old Testament of the Bible, where the Chaldeans are really spoken about a lot. They seem to get really excited learning about what Chaldeans is. So I'm definitely promoting that quite a bit in Florida, and I can say a lot more people know what Chaldeans are
Awesome.
in Florida.
That's an insane story.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
that.
that's great.
So closing with you, what is it like? What does it mean to you to be Middle Eastern and now adopted by the Chaldean community?
Well, I can say that I'm not recently adopted by the Chaldean community because my connections to Chaldeans runs very deep going
Okay.
back years to when I lived back here in Michigan. Still have some
Gotcha.
very close friends who are Chaldean,
Yep.
and you know, being Middle Eastern, I kind of, it feels like the Arabic culture outweighs the other side. You know, I'm half Lebanese, half Polish, and you know, the warmth and the connection
Yeah.
between the Arabic
Middle
community,
Eastern,
the Middle
the
Eastern,
whole Middle
approach.
Eastern culture is just amazing.
Very cool. Are you going to make any Middle Eastern food stops while you're here?
I did. I
You
already had
have.
some dolma.
All right, awesome.
I was hoping, one of my aunts, who I won't mention, would make me some Chaldean food.
Is it Netta?
Yes.
Oh, no. I'm
And-
sure she's
and
watching.
I
I'm
had
sure
my-
she's watching
I
the show.
had my dejatas and,
All right, cool.
I will throw in that when Debbie and I first started working together, one of the final stipulations was that she was going to have to cook a traditional Arabic dinner for
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
And I still haven't collected on it.
No,
So,
but I
so
will.
I'm still holding that over.
I actually have a Mabasima cookbook at my house that I will get to before you go back
Oh,
to
yeah?
Florida.
Okay.
Yeah. An extra one.
yeah.
I buy 'em like
Great.
dozens
I
at a
do
time.
cook Chaldean food.
You do?
Oh, yes.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, all the time. I do.
Coolness. Well, thank you for joining us. Hopefully, our viewers take advantage of this
Thank you.
opportunity that is rightfully theirs and work with the two of you to get their money.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
cool.
having us.
Yes.
Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.